In the quiet town of Crestwood, an old truck sat abandoned at the edge of Blackwood Forest. It was a relic of the past. Its once vibrant red paint now faded and rusted. For years, townsfolk whispered about the truck, claiming it was cursed. One moonless night, a young couple, Alex and Emily, decided to explore the legend. Armed with flashlights and a sense of adventure, they ventured into the forest. As they approached the truck, a chill ran down their spines. The air grew colder, and an eerie silence enveloped them. Emily reached out to touch the truck's door, but it creaked open on its own. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of decay. An old, tattered journal lay on the seat. Alex picked it up and began to read aloud. The entries told the story of a man named Henry, a truck driver who had vanished decades ago. His last entry described a night of blinding fog and strange whispers that led him to the forest, never to return. Suddenly, the truck's engine roared to life, headlights blinding them. The doors slammed shut, trapping Alex and Emily inside. Panic set in as the truck sped off on its own, careening through the dense forest. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't escape the locked cab. As the truck hurtled deeper into the forest, the whispers grew louder, filling their minds with terror. The trees seemed to close in, branches clawing at the truck like skeletal hands. Alex and Emily's screams were drowned out by the deafening roar of the engine and the sinister whispers that now seemed to come from the very fabric of the truck. In a final, bone-chilling jolt, the truck came to an abrupt halt in a small clearing. The engine died, and the whisper ceased. The doors unlocked, and the couple stumbled out, only to find themselves face to face with the ghostly figure of Henry. His hollow eyes stared through them as he whispered, "You shouldn't have come." The next morning, the townsfolk found the truck parked at the edge of the forest, empty. Alex and Emily were never seen again, and the legend of the cursed truck continued to haunt Crestwood, a chilling reminder of the night the souls vanished into the darkness. On a desolate stretch of highway, Jake pulled his car to the side of the road, cursing as steam billowed from the hood. Night had fallen, and the only light came from a flickering street lamp and the occasional passing car. Desperate for help, Jake spotted an old, seemingly abandoned truck parked a short distance away. The truck was an imposing presence, its once shiny exterior now rusted and scarred. Jake approached it cautiously, hoping to find something useful inside. He tried the door, and to his surprise, it creaked open. A musty, damp smell wafted out, making him gag. Determined, he rummaged through the glove compartment and found a flashlight and an old, tattered map. As he turned to leave, he noticed something strange. The dashboard had deep scratches, as if something had clawed at it in desperation. His heart raced, but he brushed it off, assuming it was just the work of animals or vandals. He slammed the door shut and began to walk back to his car, but the truck's engine suddenly roared to life. Jake froze, watching in disbelief as the truck's headlights flickered on, illuminating the deserted road. The truck slowly rolled forward, and Jake could have sworn he saw a shadowy figure in the driver's seat. Panic set in, and he ran back to his car, desperately trying to start it. The engine sputtered and died, leaving him stranded. The truck's horn blared, and it accelerated toward him. Jake jumped out of the way just in time, the truck missing him by inches. He ran into the woods, the truck's headlights casting an eerie glow through the trees. The horn blared again, and Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he stumbled through the underbrush. He could hear the truck crashing through the forest behind him, its engine growling like a predator on the hunt. In a clearing, Jake tripped and fell, twisting his ankle. Pain shot through his leg as he looked up to see the truck bearing down on him. The shadowy figure now clearer. It was a man, or what was left of one, with hollow eyes and a twisted grin. Jake screamed, but there was no one to hear him. The truck's headlights blinded him, and the last thing he saw was the twisted figure behind the wheel, reaching out with clawed hands. The truck's horn blared one final time, and then there was only darkness. The next morning, a passing motorist found Jake's car abandoned on the side of the road. There was no sign of Jake or the truck, but deep in the woods, the faint sound of a horn could still be heard, echoing through the trees. On a stormy night, Ethan drove his truck along a lonely highway, the rain pounding against his windshield. Visibility was poor, and the wiper struggled to keep up. He had heard the warnings about traveling this road during bad weather, but he was determined to reach his destination. As the road wound through a dense forest, Ethan's truck suddenly hydroplaned. He lost control, skidding off the road and crashing into a massive oak tree. Dazed but conscious, Ethan managed to free himself from the wreckage. The front of the truck was crumpled, steam rising from the engine. He grabbed his phone to call for help, but there was no signal. The forest was eerily silent, the only sound being the patter of rain on leaves. he decided to walk down the road in search of assistance, hoping to find another vehicle or a house. As he stumbled through the rain, he noticed something odd about the forest. Shadows moved in ways that defied the wind, and the trees seemed to close in around him. A feeling of dread washed over him, but he pressed on. In the distance, he saw a faint light flickering through the trees. Relieved, he made his way towards it. He emerged into a clearing where an old, dilapidated house stood. The light came from a lantern hanging on the porch. Desperate for help, Ethan knocked on the door. It creaked open on its own, revealing a dark hallway. "Hello," he called out, but there was no response. He stepped inside, hoping to find a phone. The interior was covered in dust, as if no one had lived there for years. As he ventured further, he noticed old photographs lining the walls. Each photo depicted a family, their faces twisted in expressions of terror. Ethan's unease grew as he realized the same truck appeared in every photo, its license plate matching his own. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind him, and the lantern went out. Plunged into darkness, Ethan fumbled for his flashlight, his hands shaking. When he finally managed to turn it on, the beam revealed a figure standing at the end of the hallway. It was a man, gaunt and hollow-eyed, with a twisted grin on his face. "You're not the first," the figure whispered, its voice echoing through the empty house. "And you won't be the last." Ethan turned to run, but the hallway stretched impossibly long before him. The figure's footsteps echoed closer, and the air grew colder. Panic set in as he realized there was no escape. The figure reached out, its icy fingers closing around his arm. Ethan screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the darkness. The next morning, a passerby found Ethan's truck, still crashed against the oak tree. The door was open, and there was no sign of Ethan. The only clue was a series of muddy footprints leading into the forest, where the old house stood, waiting for its next visitor. In the quiet town of Maplewood, the streets were deserted by 9 p.m., with only the hum of distant traffic breaking the silence. Emily, a high school senior, had just finished her shift at the local diner. She walked towards her car, parked in a poorly lit area of the lot, unaware of the lurking danger. As she approached her car, she heard the rumble of an engine behind her. Turning, she saw an old, dark green truck idling nearby. Its windows were tinted, concealing the driver. Unease crept over her, and she quickened her pace. Suddenly, the truck's engine roared, and it sped towards her. Before she could react, a man leaped out, grabbing her from behind. A cloth was pressed over her mouth, and she felt herself losing consciousness. When Emily awoke, she was in the back of the truck, hands bound and mouth gagged. Panic set in as she struggled against the ropes. The truck jolted along a bumpy road, and she could see through the small window that they were heading deep into the countryside, away from any signs of civilization. Hours passed before the truck finally stopped. The man opened the back, revealing a dilapidated cabin hidden in the woods. He dragged Emily inside, locking her in a small, windowless room. The walls were covered in disturbing photographs of other victims, and Emily's heart raced as she realized she was not the first to be taken here. Days blurred together in a terrifying routine. The man, whose face remained hidden by a hood, brought her food and water but never spoke. Emily's mind raced with thoughts of escape. One night, as the man slept, she managed to loosen the ropes binding her hands. With painstaking care, she freed herself and crept out of the room. The cabin creaked with every step as she made her way to the door. The truck keys hung on a hook by the entrance. She grabbed them and silently prayed the truck would start. Slipping outside, she climbed into the driver's seat, her hands trembling as she turned the key. The engine roared to life, and she sped away, the cabin shrinking in the rearview mirror. Emily drove for what felt like hours until she found a gas station. She stumbled inside, begging the attendant to call the police. Within minutes, officers arrived, and Emily was finally safe. The man was never found, but the old truck, abandoned in the woods, served as a haunting reminder of her ordeal. Emily vowed to never let her guard down again, knowing that the shadow of her abductor could still be out there, waiting for his next victim.